This edition of Farming the Countryside is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience Range and Pasture. Your land, your herd, our commitment. Learn more at rangeandpasture.com/countryside. Here's a look at some of the work we've been doing with Corteva Pasture and Range on our farm.
Well, spring of 2026 here, I think our plan is look at the ultigraze in a couple of places where we need to do that just because we need the fertility, but we also need the weed control in some hard to get to places. But then we'll prioritize pastures that didn't get treated with NovaGraze or Adoracor last year, just knowing those will probably be problem spots. Evaluate what we did use NovaGraze with last year and see if we have enough annual Espadiza that helps with weed control, or if we need to go in and spray there again to help continue to promote that Espadiza and hopefully even some white clover.
White clover is really nice to introduce into these cool season grass pastures. It is very tolerant to lower soil pHs, to poor fertility, and so they're a little more forgiving than a lot of other legumes. But having white clover in there also is going to help you out with your nutritional needs for your cattle.
To see more from our farm and others, just go to rangeandpasture.com/countryside.
Hi, I'm Andrew McCrea. Welcome to our farm and ranch in northwest Missouri. My great-great-grandfather settled here in 1910, and I'm the fifth generation to grow crops and livestock here. As a farmer myself, I know the highs and lows of this life, the issues we confront every day, some new, some as old as farming itself. This show is a place to talk with farmers and others in the ag industry about topics that mean something to us, topics that can improve the present and future of our operations. This is Farming the Countryside.
Welcome to Farming the Countryside. Dave Hoy is my guest with AgriGold Senior Agronomy Manager for the Western Corn Belt. And Dave, you're telling me you're in Grundy Center. You've got great ground around your home there where you live in Iowa, right?
It's fantastic. I mean, 4 feet of black topsoil. It rains about every 10 days. I don't know. You just go out and throw some seeds out of your pocket. It seems like they grow. Very blessed to live here in Northeast Iowa.
What's the crop look like right now in Grundy Center? Have you had a good spring to get that crop in?
Yeah, really early it was wet, and so that recharged the soil water, which really helped get us off to a good start. And a lot of people were able to get the corn and soybeans in. Now, the other thing is it kind of turned off a little dry. The spigot turned off here, which isn't a bad thing to get everything in the ground timely. But we do have a few instances in some of that clay type soil where the furrow is opening up a little bit, especially on those soybeans, and starting to dry out that furrow a little bit, which gives us a little cause for concern. But for the most part, we've got a lot of corn in that just emerging to about V3 is the biggest corn that I've seen. Now, the other side of it in Grundy County up here, we grow a lot of seed corn. And so the seed corn is going in really well right now. Still waiting on the second planting and maybe some other some males going in, but boy, everything seems to be clicking along pretty well. Fingers crossed up here in Northeast Iowa.
Of course, you cover a pretty broad range, Western Corn Belt, but I'm sure you're in touch with the folks, in the East as well. What are you hearing? I have heard Eastern Corn Belt has been a little slower in my travels. That's what I've seen, but kind of overall in the Midwest and the Corn Belt, what are you hearing as far as how this crop's gone in?
Yeah, it's really a tale of two cities, almost a glass half full, glass empty scenario, where you have areas that's too wet and areas much too dry. Out east, you've got pockets where we've had some rain, maybe a little too much rain, but things are clicking along fairly well. Like you said, maybe a little slower, a little cooler, and would like to have some growing degree units click along here in the east as you go east of the Mississippi, really bring that heat up to get a good emergence and a good stand establishment. Now, as you go west, it's we're at the top of the glass where the glass is empty. And starting to get out in Nebraska and Western Iowa, even down into Kansas, we're starting to see some very dry conditions. Drought Monitor will confirm that. But one of my agronomists, he said he went out to water the trees that he had planted, and the rabbits ate through the hose trying to get to the water. So you can tell it's really dry. Even if the rabbits are chewing through hoses, man, it's really a dry scenario. And we just have, 4 inches, 5 inches of dry soil. And that's really hard to get that seed to imbibe enough water to germinate and really get a good stand establishment there.
Yeah. Some things are out of our control for the most part, the weather, unless I guess you have irrigation, but a lot of us, we're relying on what falls from the sky. One thing, though, I'm interested in that is somewhat within our control as far as how much we're going to spend on this crop. And I'm just curious, how has this year and a few of these years that have been tighter, is that impacting what you're seeing as far as what we're doing or not doing with our corn crop?
It has. When you look at the farmers that went out and were able to procure and get some fall work done, get some fall fertilizer on, those are the ones that are ahead of the game right now, just because they're able to get it at a good price. Now they have an opportunity to evaluate this corn stand as it grows and see, all right, what do I need to add to it? If you're out walking your fields, you got your shovel in hand, you're digging up some roots, you could really take a look at it and say, maybe I need to add a little more side dress nitrogen, maybe I need to add some micronutrients or even an extra pass of fungicide. So by having that opportunity in the fall, it gave us more opportunity in the spring. Now, that's not saying that the guys or the people that waited till spring to do everything are out of the mix. They still could go out there and look at those fields and walk them. And but they just have to be more price conscious. Make sure you get a good ROI when you're out spraying. Don't just recreational spray. Make sure you're evaluating it and make good agronomic decisions when it comes to applying anything to that crop. Making sure that you do have that plan for at the end of the year, how much is it going to get you from the fence row to fence row? That's what we're making our money on.
Yeah, talk to me about if I'm walking my field, and some of us are better than this than others, because sometimes it's nice to have somebody that maybe has more knowledge than us at what they're looking at. But if I'm digging those roots, what am I looking for? What are some of the key things that I should be using to evaluate the decisions I'm going to make here right now or in the coming weeks?
Great question. When you start digging those roots, you want to look for a healthy root, right? The first thing I always look at when I'm digging that root, clean it off. Is it growing down at a 45-degree angle? Is it really getting that fibrous root system out there? Because right now in the early stages, we're in that just primary root system. It's starting to maybe put some feelers out. I want to make sure that I don't have any compaction, that everything's growing down, not out. Now, in a droughty year, that's great. In a wet year, boy, those roots only grow where their needs are met. And so if all their needs are met in the top 4 inches, they're not going to grow much. In a droughty condition, boy, they really do grow down. But I want to make sure that there's no compaction layers out there, making sure that those roots are growing down, not out. The second thing I'm looking at in those roots is making sure they're healthy, especially in this early stage when we're, digging up these plants and you start seeing some brown lesions or some pink fungus out there. Now I know I've got some issues, and that's going to affect not only the stand establishment, but the vigor of that early plant. And it's just going to be struggling all year, and you're going to take a yield loss when that thing comes to fruition.
How much of what I would see now when I dig those roots, though, is stuff that's already happened and I can't do anything about it? It's decisions I should have done differently back when I was planting or before.
Yeah, that's the report card that we always get. It's always looking back. Good lessons learned, right? Making sure that we have a good seed treatment on the corn and the soybeans especially. But yeah, you start seeing those lesions. There's really not much you can do from a fungicide standpoint. Or if you have bugs chewing on them, there's not a lot we can do with the bugs right now either. So just one of those lessons learned that we can go out there and, even if it's compaction, hey, we know we have to do a little deep tillage, but yeah, one of those lessons learned. Now, the other thing I'll say, you go out there and you see those roots and they're a little scraggly and you start seeing some striping on the plant. Hey, maybe now we can do something with that. If it's a micronutrient such as, zinc or sulfur or something like that, we can put that in there, maybe foliar, maybe just, band it or side dress it, something like that. And that will give that plant a jump start, and hopefully you can correct that in season.
Let's talk about nitrogen. We can talk about all the nutrients, but nitrogen, of course, is usually the big one. So, prices are higher. Maybe somebody has already procured their nitrogen back, early when it was a little cheaper. But this is the time when the plant needs it more than anything, right? I mean, as we get to this V6 and up, I mean, where should I be applying this, and what's the right timing for me to get the crop the nitrogen it needs at the most important point?
Absolutely. There's two, two kind of go no go times, and for me that V4 to V6 range, boy, that's kind of a no go. Stay out of the field. And then right after that, that corn plant enters that rapid growth stage where it's really expanding its roots. It's really putting on a lot of shoots, bringing in a lot of nitrogen. And if we have too dry or too wet soils, that really restricts the amount of nitrogen it can bring up. So after V6, that's a great time, if you do feel like you're running a little short, to go out there and put that on to give that plant a healthy jump start. And then once we get closer to, at that V12 to V15 range, boy, all the way up to tasseling, then you can really lay it on too, because we know that's when the corn takes its second amount of really big upshot of nitrogen, and the most amount of nitrogen it takes all year. So those are my two go no go times. And that's really when you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And not saying, you can put it out there now, but boy, I'd really rather wait till that V6 time frame to really, even if you're going out there with urea, dry spreading over the top or side dress, boy, that's a really great time to give that plant a jump start. And you just never know what the year's going to bring. That's why there's so much hope in agriculture, because boy, we could come in there and get a rain every 10 days and it's a beautiful crop and the price is up, and boy, everybody's out buying Chevy trucks and putting up bins. It's a great time. We just don't know. So I always plan for hope and a positive outcome. And, I'm the eternal optimist, I guess.
Well, with those nitrogen applications, then are you thinking, and again, every field's different. You've got to evaluate, every season's different. But are you looking then at possibly doing two passes then, one at V6 or just after, and then one closer to tassel?
If that crop is there, boy, you can split apply it. Absolutely. You don't have to go out there with 60, 90 pounds all at once. You could go out there and put it on in two passes. That's really a nice spoon feeding way to make sure that that crop really brings it in and you don't lose as much. So if a person was really only going to put on so much and had the opportunity to split apply, you're actually going to be more efficient doing that. Now, I understand a lot of people don't have that time, equipment, or, depth and breadth of their operation. But still, if you do have that opportunity, it really spoon feeds that plant along all year.
Do you have a preferred way to apply that, or any preferred product, or does it just depend wildly upon where you're farming and what that crop in that season's like?
Yeah, it really depends. The only thing I'd caution is, if you're going with any type of application, make sure that there's maybe some rain in the forecast, because if you can get it in the ground, great. If you're putting it on top, boy, we like to have some rain on top. That's my only caveat. I really don't care what product you use, as long as it's good, agronomically sound, and trusted from a good source.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk then about some of the other nutrients, because phosphorus, you mentioned about the striping and some different things. What am I looking for to know if whether it's the macros or some of the micros that I need to do something with those too?
Sure. If you had a soil test, that's really a good place to start. But we start seeing those stunted plants out there and maybe a little purpling, boy, then we know that we've got some issues. It could be herbicide injury, but more than likely it's going to be the plant doesn't have access to those nutrients. And that's something a lot of people kind of miss is, boy, I put phosphorus out there, but my plant is suffering. Why? And a lot of times it's because, well, the plant can't get to it yet. So that's something that a lot of people really need to make sure they're aware of, is just because you spread it out there and you tilled it in 6 inches, but the roots are only at 4 inches, they can't get to it yet. So a lot of times we just need to maybe give it an extra shot or be patient, and the plants will grow out of it. Unfortunately, we don't like corn to have a bad day. And if it's stunted and scraggly, it's having a bad day. So you are affecting yield. That's why we always recommend making sure we keep the nutrients in the top 2-3 inches. That's where the plant's going to get to it. So just making sure the roots are where the nutrients are, that really helps get everything in there. But yeah, that phosphorus, boy, we start seeing those purpling out there, and that's something that we need to be concerned about.
I hear a lot of folks now talking about doing tissue sampling as opposed to or in addition to the soil sampling. What are you hearing, and how should I evaluate whether to do that?
Yeah, AgriGold has done a lot of tissue sampling in the past. And one thing we've really kind of learned from that process is a little earlier is always better. So my ask is, once we get past that V6 stage, just go out there and start pulling some samples. Take those tissue samples, send them off to the lab, whatever your favorite lab is, and just get a report card. Now, know that it's just a snapshot of that day, but you can still get an idea of where you're at. And, more samples is better, especially with tissue sampling. Boy, take as many samples as you can, send them off, and that'll give you a report card of where that plant is at and how it's feeling. So it is a good tool for us that we have in our toolbox. It's not necessarily the end all be all, because boy, we get a good rain or something and those levels will change as the plant uptakes nutrients, but it will give you a good idea of kind of where you're sitting right now. And maybe, is it a good investment to put some extra, micros or macros out there, or maybe the plant's sitting good and it's a waste of time. That way you can save a little money on a pass.
Yeah, that's what's difficult is how do I evaluate that? And you mentioned things can change so often with a certain day or a certain week. Is there a good way to really get a good idea of exactly what I need?
The big thing I always say is find a trusted advisor. Somebody that knows, has been in there, has done that. Whether it's a compatriot that farms down the road, or an agronomist, or somebody that you feel you can trust that knows what they're talking about. That's always important. I mean, me personally, I'm a certified crop advisor. I love the CCA program, and a lot of the CCAs, just to stay current, they have to be up to speed on a lot of this stuff. So shameless plug for the CCA program, but I do like that. And they do have a very good way of keeping everybody up to speed. So
we may still be a little ways away from this, but fungicide, how am I going to make my evaluation? Some folks say, oh, you got to do 2 passes. Some folks say, well, sometimes I do nothing. How do I make this choice?
It's a great question, because there's so many variables when it comes to fungicide. Now, there are a lot of plants out there that are inherently healthy that maybe just don't respond much to fungicide. So knowing your seed to begin with, how it's going to react in that environment, that's important. But I always say, from an agronomy standpoint, and I'm agronomist first, make sure before you apply a fungicide, make sure you know what you're going after. If that plant is big, green, and healthy, just maybe hold off a little bit. If they're starting to see some gray leaf spot, southern rust, tar spot, now you need to act. The other thing is, make sure you have a plan in place and a system to apply it. Don't rely on an airplane, because that airplane might be booked 3 weeks out. So make sure you are ahead of that ball game, out there talking to whoever's going to apply it if you're not going to, and make sure you get on the schedule. So, but yeah, just make sure you're scouting those fields and looking and evaluating what diseases are present, and will the fungicide that I have selected actually do anything against those diseases.
You'll hear some growers say that they are going to try to we want to make the plant as healthy as possible. Some say, well, I will apply micronutrient packs and make sure that plant's healthy so it will not need the fungicide. Is that really the case, or you need a fungicide when you've got the disease there, and it's not going to matter how much extra nutrients you give to that corn plant, it won't be able to thrive in that condition?
I wish that was the case. I'd love to be able to go out there and just have everything, a super healthy plant that never gets disease. Unfortunately, the wind doth blow and the rain doth fall, and we have diseases come in. And even the healthiest plants, they can get broken down. I mean, even healthy people get sick sometimes. But boy, those plants, even though they're super healthy, they can get a fungus on them or a bacteria that they might be overloaded with and just can't handle it. Now, I will say this: healthier plants handle diseases better. They can push through that. I've seen so many times where a good, healthy corn plant will have a disease come in and it'll still yield a tremendous amount because it's able to overcome that. But I always am looking for, if I've got a disease out there, I want to stop it. I want to nip it in the bud and do what I can to make sure that I have every opportunity to get all the kernels I can.
Dave, in the time we've got left here, I did want to leave a little time to talk some about hybrids and just technology and so forth. One of the things we've heard a lot about is short stature corn. And I just wondered, where do we stand on that? Because that has been heralded as something that could really be a breakthrough as far as yields and something that will be a bit novel. Just curious what you're hearing and where we're at with that.
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there with all these technologies. The benefits of shorter corn are, boy, you could get the sprayers through there a lot easier later in the year. You know, you can, you have better stalks that maybe don't blow down in the derechos and the winds. We're still early in the game on short statured corn, though. I really believe that the best is yet to come, and we really haven't seen it yet. So there's some, you know, emerging technologies that are going to be coming down the pipe. And I can't speak to those because that's a different company. But the things that I've seen are really unique and intriguing because it does give us a lot of opportunity to mix and match hybrids and really put things in there. The downfall of that short statured corn I see now, I grew up in southern Iowa, way down in the goat hills, and short statured corn would not work there. So I want everybody to hear short statured corn really has a place in the world. It's not everywhere in the world. So, you know, as you look at these new technologies, make sure you evaluate it on your own farms, in your own fields. Does it fit? Does it not? And just be honest and open about that, because there's a lot of technologies. And if this one doesn't work, maybe the next one will, or a different one that's already available will give you that next level bump to up your total production.
Talk about that for a moment. You mentioned it wouldn't work well in southern Iowa. So why is that? Why is the difference there?
So you get that shorter corn, and even if it's new technology or just hybrids, really, you get some shorter hybrids out there on those side hills, and you know, maybe it's some clay, and they don't get as tall. And now you got this big ear that's hanging down at the end of the year, and the tip of it is dragging in the dirt, and that's really hard for the snout to get under, especially on those side hills. So making sure we have that ear placement up as tall as we can on those side hills. I know I have to talk to my dad about it every year, but we make sure we get those ears up high enough to where we can get the snout under it and not chop those ears in half.
Yeah, well, I wondered if that's what we were going to say, because yeah, how short is too short, and it's no fun running snouts in the ground, and then you've got those busted up and a bunch of dirt in your head. That's not going to work well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. You know, as we wind up here, you see a lot of fields, not only there in Northeast Iowa, but all over. Other things that we should think about now is a lot of us have the crop in, it's emerged, we're watching it, just things that you would tell us to keep in mind to make the most of this growing season.
Yeah. On the corn side, you know, really as we're looking at that water situation, whether it's too much or too little, that's the big concern I have for the Corn Belt this year, whether you had too much or too little. And my ask of everybody is grab that spade and go dig roots, because those roots tell us so much. You know, I've been around too many times where we have that field that's maybe a little wet, or a part of the field that's too wet, and those are pancake roots. They're only 2 inches deep, but there's enough moisture that corn plant looks beautiful. And driving down the gravel road, it looks beautiful at 55 miles an hour, but boy, you get in there and you're about 10 days away from devastation. So my ask of everybody is go out there and dig those roots, really evaluate them. And especially in those wetter areas, see if they're getting down deep. Now, the other thing on the dry side, of course, you can't, unless you're under a pivot, you can't make it rain. But my other big concern about this year in particular is if we are doing any corn on corn, or we have corn on corn fields adjacent, maybe we have some rootworm activity left over from last year. If it's dry, those bugs, when they chew on those corn plants, they do a lot more damage than when it's wet. And so in a dry scenario, you're losing those roots, and those root hairs are the ones that uptake the water. And if there's any water out there and you have no roots, you can't bring any nutrients or anything into that crop because of the root worms. So Again, a shovel is your best friend. Dig those roots and see if you have any damage, if you have any rootworm feeding. That way you'll know kind of what to expect, because we don't like surprises at the end of the year, bad surprises. We like good surprises, but those bad surprises at the end of the year are devastating, and we really want to make sure that we know what we're going into.
Dave, great conversation. I sure appreciate your time.
I had a great time. Thank you so much.
This edition of Farming the Countryside has been brought to you by Corteva Agriscience Range and Pasture. Your land, your herd, our commitment. Learn more at rangeandpasture.com/countryside.